here today for Amazing TV with the legendary producer and DJ Ron Trent from Chicago. He helped build the foundation of what we know today as house music. When he started, it didn't exist, so he helped create that music. And we're here today to learn about how that happened and what his thoughts are about what's going on currently. So, Ron, when you started with house music, well, going back, it didn't exist when you started. You were younger.
Well, just to clarify, when I was younger, definitely, house music was a term derived from a certain version of what Frankie Knuckles used to play, which is at the warehouse. So Mr. Robert Williams, who owned the warehouse, Candace Franklin brought it from New York. Mr. Williams was actually from New York too. And he was actually truancy officer for Frankie Knuckles and Larry Levan, which is interesting. And so he knew them as teenagers, but when Mr. Williams moved from New York to Chicago, he lived in the warehouse. So that was around 76, 77. And so by the time that I actually got around to being involved in culture, which was in the early 80s, that kind of thing, and started DJing, that kind of thing, house music wasn't necessarily a term that was coined. It's more underground. And house music became more of a, coined, commercialized name once producers started actually producing stuff out of the city that was kind of like the soundtrack of or the interpretation of what Frankie and then later Ron Hardy was playing. So by the time that I got involved, it was more underground, which is a combination of a lot of different things, like various different types of music. Now, it's very formulaic. People kind of look at house music as being like 4/4 rhythms, electronic sound, when it's really more or less a music that's comprised of all different types of music. It's a style. It's a style house, if you will. No pun intended, but I mean, it's literally, in talking about it and discussing it with a lot of the older guys that went to the warehouse, or went to the power plant, went to the music box. I went to the music box. I mean, from based on my age, I'm talking 76, 77. That was way before my time. But by the time that I started kind of going out, that kind of thing, it kind of started to become a culture of its own. I think that Fat Pop Freddy pointed out in his interviews, culture has to have a dance, a fashion form, and a music, and then from that things kind of develop into their own kind of thing. So by the time that I got involved with it, it had started as an underground Chicago culture amongst young black kids, mainly starting out of the gay community, and then later going to the heterosexual community. And that's kind of like what it happened. By the time we got to the heterosexual community, it's like explosive, because it had been underground. Underground music had been comprised and stayed where it was. Of course, the gay scene was, had to be kind of in its own thing, and protected in a sense. And so Mr. Williams opened the warehouse. That's what it was about. It was a membership club. It was private. Not everybody went, and it was word of mouth. And it developed from those 200, 300, 400, 500 people into what we know as today. It wasn't like everybody was there, which is what everybody likes to claim now. It was not like that. It wasn't even like that when I was doing that. It was very word of mouth.
So like a safe space for
absolutely safe space, man. I mean, by the time I even, with myself, as I was even putting on some clothes a little earlier and reminding myself of how I used to dress, we were like the punk kids. We were the radical kids. We were not like everybody else. And we pioneered that. Everybody can jump on the bandwagon now, obviously, and talk about what, I'm down with this. It wasn't like that back in the day, because you could either get beat up, or people would just kind of look at that. You were really standing outside of the ground. And it takes a certain level of independence and self-awareness to do that. Especially being for a heterosexual male in particular. recently I was doing an interview, I was realizing that, wow, yeah, I got scrutinized on both sides. I had both communities that didn't necessarily accept me. You know, the heterosexual community was like, what you doing? You know, and then you had the homosexual community was like, what's he doing here? You know, these kind of things are going on. You know what I mean? And so obviously we've evolved and merged, but it kind of definitely was in its own sections. But in that diversity came the beauty of what it is today. You know what I mean? So I know I'll be long-winded about it, but so much to say.
Yeah. So from what it sounds like, we started from disco and then evolved into this underground club music.
Well, absolutely. I mean, house music is derived from disco and underground culture. Disco is basically up-tempo R&B. It became kind of more formulaic, like in, say, 1979, so maybe 78, 79, when it was something that could be packaged, right? So something that kind of developed in the underground, you know, dance scene, and primarily in New York City, with the likes of the club like the Gallery, which was kind of like the second coming of, say, the law. You had the law for David Crusoe, which is beginnings. Then you had the Gallery with Seattle, and out of that time, kind of like that it was becoming once again a cultural formula, you know. But these things were, you know, these sounds that we know today were developed out of people searching for something new and doing something new. Even the DJ culture was not what we know it today to be. It was more about programming, meaning it wasn't about mixing.
Okay.
It was about playing music actually to tell a story, literally.
I like to say a journey.
Yeah, well, a journey, but literally, I'm talking about like using music or records to tell a story, using song titles to tell a sentence, like in a story. So I love you. Your love means everything. Like literally, like playing songs that, you know, and that was like kind of the way the house style was developed. And out of that, you know, evolved into, you know, mixing things. So you have like Francis Grosso was the first person to mix 2 records, you know, which was something that had been done before. They were called transitions. They weren't called, it was called mixing. So you had all these, you know, it's different parts of all this. It's not this monolith, you know. And now, I mean, that's why it's kind of hard and sad to see today, where, you know, you have a new generation of DJs and people that have now capitalized on being a DJ. We don't really understand what's coming from. And the heart and soul of this was really about, which is kind of, it's more of an artistic expression, for real. And so I come out of that, you know, I come out of that history, you know, and it's, you know, when I'm playing music, I'm still paying tribute to those people that developed this style out of nothing. You know what I mean? So, but yeah.
I feel like the music was also hard to come by, right? You know, like people had to make these records, and how did you go about finding it?
Well, so that's the thing, is that, you know, it's really based on somebody's taste and somebody's ability to have good ear, somebody's ability to be able to find these records, you know what I mean? And painstakingly digging for records and digging for sounds to try to tell that story. Finding the right color. It's like being a painter. You know what I'm saying? You try to find the perfect color to match what it is that you're trying to do. And so you have all these people that, not all these people, it's actually really a small community of people that were creating this art, right? And, you know, finding the perfect song or songs that would sonically also be able to translate to people. Because it wasn't about just playing the records, it was also the sonic deliverance that was important. So, back in my time, you learned how to mix and collect music, but you also learned how to, everything about musical equipment, and what you needed to do in order to make it sound the way you wanted it to sound, which is most important because you're creating a sonic thread. So you can get the audio part of it, it really needs together. You're seeing some of this culture now with some listening rooms, people getting into audiophile listening rooms, this kind of thing. But for me, you had to be like a sound engineer, you had to be a record collector, you had to be a mixologist, you had to do all these things. Where now you can get a technology program. You know what I mean? A couple of MP3s. You can watch the screen. You know, I've seen that a lot. You know, and it's like, okay, it's a video game for some people, but it's very serious for some of us. Put it like that. Yeah.
So you must have had to feel the need to make some of this music that you wanted to hear but couldn't find anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's what happened really kind of like, if you want to call it like house music, is that a lot of us that when we start hearing this new thing, this new punk electronic dance music, because that's really what the scene was. We started instead of like, you know, when we got a hold of equipment, we started creating our own soundtrack. You know what I mean? We were heavily influenced from Italo disco, up-tempo R&B, which is what we call disco, certain rock tunes, alternative records, all kinds of stuff. It was never, you know, one thing. It was like all these things, right? And out of all these things, you have all these different things that you pull from. You know, it's not just this one formulaic 4-on-4 beat that happens all night. And that is, it wasn't about that. It's about this robust, you know, audio experience, right? So for us, when we started making it, we were trying to, you know, create our own version of what an experience in my life. You know, something we wanted to create, something we didn't hear. You know, it was like imagination was taking over. You know, along with that was, you know, we were fashion kids. Like, you know, we had big imaginations, right? So, you know, we collect a lot of, you know, magazines, trying to study what was going on around the world. And so when you go to the party, you know, people were trying to dress like that, you know. Like what Frankie Knuckles just calls it, you know, the dance floor is a poor man's paradise. You know what I'm saying? So people for one night or for one moment can, you know, go express themselves and have a good time, you know, try to put on their best clothes, whatever, and have a good time, and leave a different person. You know, so it was probably saving a lot of people's lives. You know what I mean? Seriously, going and sorting it out and being somebody else for 12 hours.
It's a therapeutic experience.
Oh, to the max. People try to replace it now with the gym and everything, working out. That's not what this is. You know?
Yeah. Well, dance is social movement, right? That's social exercise.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed.
It's all expression, emotion.
Indeed.
Yeah. So, how did you learn to make music? Like, did you have any formal education doing it, or did you just like go in the studio and start playing things around?
Right. So for me, I mean, everybody's different. For me, being a kid in the 70s, you know, the idea of being a DJ was like, what do you want, on the radio or something? Like, what do you do, DJ? You know, we had disco DJ, of course, but it was a glorified profession. I originally wanted to be a musician. Like, you know, you want to have a rock band and be a rock band in the 70s. So, but my father was a percussionist. He had his own band. My father also DJ'd in the 70s. He was a vice president of a record company, Bob Record in Chicago. Record crews were like these record clubs. They were kind of like dominant force for breaking music and that kind of thing. So I got introduced to DJing through really through my pops and then through people that I grew up with that were a little older than me. And but to answer your question, I had some of the musicians training too. Because I played percussion and I played, you know, trap drums. And I didn't want to play keys. I was like, you know, when you're a kid, yeah, you're proud to play piano. You got long feet. That shit was corny to me. So I didn't really do that until later. So, but once I got introduced to, electronic equipment, that kind of thing, I found a way to be able to express myself. You know, as a musician, so because I was attracted to drums, I wanted to play drums. So making drum tracks was a big thing with us. We used to call rhythm tracks. So that's how I got that started. And then, you know, I started learning. I knew about chords and stuff like that a little bit, and then just kind of evolved. You know, and I challenged myself consistently as I do today. You know, to want to develop as a musician or to express myself through these electronics. So that's kind of like how it happened. It's was constant evolution of learning about new equipment and keeping on top of things. And not every piece of equipment is for everybody. Everybody's, a lot of times they want to get, the newest, latest technology. And I think sometimes actually also how people lose themselves because they can express themselves necessarily soulfully through the electronics. So I find things that work with me. Right? So then I develop from there. The most recent challenge the last couple years has been playing guitar, which I wanted to do, but it's to buy guitars, like look at them. Never picked it up until the pandemic. Right. And then I picked it up and I've been learning how to play the guitar. I played guitar on my album, all of the guitars that are on there, except for, I played on that track too. I have a track featuring Grooming, which is on my warm album, which, it's got more from, Grooming with the bass and my man on the guitar and that kind of thing, you know what I'm saying? But other than that, I'm playing guitar now. Not fluidly like stay on stage, but I can play rhythm guitar and do other things. The bottom line is that I'm constantly challenging myself. And that's what you hear in that production over a period of time. It's just constant development and listening and development, and always looking for the next level. Instead of being kind of sedentary, like, oh yeah, this was good. I know guys that did that, they like, like All the States is track that a lot of people know me from, but then I was like 14 years old.
Wow.
14. Yeah. And it's just kind of like one of those things. It was a track. I wanted to make a track that, express myself through, the keys and through the drums or whatever it could be, and have a track that nobody else had. And that's how we used to do it. Stand out as a DJ, you kind of like make your own stuff. You know what I mean? So that kind of made you give you a little edge. And so that's one of those pieces. That I created out of just wanting to step it up a little further. Yeah.
So you get like a lot of inspiration from things like the culture, but also from where else, like art or fashion or.
Yeah, I use a lot of reference material. I'm an avid movie. I collect a lot of movies. I collect a lot of books, and so I always need reference material, and life itself is always inspiring. Right? So, I might take something that I've been through a moment and create something, or have something in my imagination and create something. But yeah, reference material is always movies and books for me. Always, I might read something that gives me, some value, puts me in a place, But the rest of this stuff comes from the stars.
Just life experiences.
Yeah.
That bring it to you.
It's cosmic.
So, what happened in terms of you then decided one day to create a record label?
It wasn't my idea to create a record label. And Prescription is actually Shay's idea because he was older, he had more experience, and he had worked under Kevin Saunders with Inner City, Detroit. He's from Chicago. Shay's from Chicago, but he moved to Detroit and worked. And by the time we met, started creating music, he felt like we should create our own imprint. Okay, sure, let's do that. I was more interested in making music. I was just like, yeah, whatever. And I had no background in having a record label. I worked under Clubhouse Records. It was owned by Hula Fingers from Harvey, Illinois, who they made a lot of dope jams in the past, but had moved on to becoming in-house producers for Job Records. And they actually produced Jazzy Jeff and Fresh Prince Summertime. And a few other things because they were in-house producing. I think it was Jazzy Jeff and Fresh Prince at that time, Cool Mo D, High Five, a few other artists, and they were doing, this is my point. They come from the house, producing house music, but they had the ability to do R&B and all these other things that were influencing, the radio and that kind of thing, because we're guys who study music, right? And we had a different edge, you know. Like I was talking about earlier, my old DJ buddy from high school is No ID, produces for Jay-Z. Talk Kanye West. Twilight Zone comes from Chicago as well, along with No ID. They produced Common's first album. We all went to high school together, believe it or not. Common and what we call Lonnie or Rashid, and my old DJ buddy, Dion. Twilight went to Twilight. But anyway, Dion and Twilight were in the same neighborhood. We all grew up as house DJs. Young house DJs that were emphatic about collecting music and this kind of thing. So with Chicago's is very interesting because you have this hip hop and house music bridge that's happening, right? And but it really comes from just being lovers of music, and that's ultimately what this is about. It's not really so much about a genre or whatever. As a matter of fact, when I was coming up with a big genre oriented, it was kind of more like something you did a classification for commercialism. We were about being underground. You know what I mean? It was like that was the afterthought. It was like, oh, okay, yeah, so that's that. Okay, all right, cool. That's, you know what I mean? It was that kind of thing. And even if there was something that was commercial, we would try to find a thing that wasn't there or wasn't being exposed in music.
Breaking boundaries.
Yeah, with music, with everything. This is about being edgy. And that was our thing. Still is our thing.
Yeah, definitely.
You know what I mean? So that's when we see that young brother Kanye do what he's doing. I'm like, I get it. Same thing with which Virgil Abloh was my intern for a couple of years. At that time, he was just an art student, architect, to be an architect and that kind of thing. He came and he worked at doing a party called Africa High Five in Chicago, which was one of the first Afrobeats, if not the first Afrobeat party in Chicago. And Virgil wanted to be, it came out of nowhere. One day, my business partner came and was like, hey, this kid Virgil, he wants to work for us. And it was like, okay, cool. Coat check and that's what he was doing. And little did I know he was sitting back studying this.
Definitely.
Studying what I was doing, He was quiet, didn't talk too much, and then later, he blows up. So, okay, we sit back and take notes. So it's cool, man. I like to see these things blossom and happen, but it comes out of an innocence and synergy and understanding of being edgy, finding the next thing, and keeping your eyes and ears open and being humble at the end of it. We are developers of art and culture and that kind of thing. It's like, we're coming from that place, and it's about being an individual. So I know being long, it's not always good about this thing, but you gotta know these things. It's not about house music. Yeah.
So where do you see it going now, considering, like you said earlier, the advent of just being able to create music without using actual instruments anymore? You just use program for your beats. Do you think we're going to be losing some of that organic feel of the music?
Well, I'm going to tell you, just like history repeats itself. I mean, it's certain things are timeless, and certain things are not. And certain things just die off. They burn themselves out very quickly. And you keep always having to go back to the real root, which is what happens a lot of times in sample culture and that kind of thing too. You always have to go back, look back, because there's something authentic there that you're not getting in this time, because it's a surface philosophy that's happening. So you kind of go back to, that time, that era, and the energy of when it was just, let's create something out of nothing. We don't have a lot, but let's create it. Necessity is the mother of invention, right? So you kind of go to that heart and soul, whatever it is. So regardless of these things that happen now, sure, it's an abundance of it. It's a lot of noise happening. Put it like that. Some stuff is dope and great. Some stuff is really and it's nobody. I think sometimes people are not being honest. I come from a time when people weren't doing someone good, somebody tell you, now, take your ass back in the basement over there, or that's not working. And then you had a contingency in the audience that also would let you kind of know, like, if you weren't playing well, or if you weren't playing something, like, people walk off the floor, actually, or whatever the case may be. Now everybody's kind of following trends and they want to stay cool and popular, so they follow what everybody else does. A lot of times. That's what the majority does. But it's always kind of been that way. But for this, being as specific that it is, it's always been, you've had a contingency of people that kind of like, yeah, that works, that doesn't work. Yeah, that works, that doesn't work. A lot of music that's come out that we know today that are now staples, right? Kind of were songs that were tested for the very first time in underground clubs with us, right? And then it went to the radio. Now it's kind of like the opposite, right? So, for instance, you have a club like the Paradise Garage, which had underground and commercial power. There was a man that would choose a tune that he liked, or he heard somebody give him something, he would play it. He would make people know it. Frankie Crocker, who was the biggest radio program in the world, was a friend of Larry the Man, who would hear what he was playing at the club, take that song, put it on the radio. Boom. Huge hit. That's how it kind of worked. Now, it's more people follow what they see on on smartphones, streaming or whatever, who's following what. And then it then affects how people, that's their ear training, right? Now. So to answer your question, the full gamut, I think that it's going to play itself out, because it's going to still have to go back to the root, regardless. So that's my take on it.
I feel like it doesn't translate on the dance floor either when you hear some of that music. When it comes to the speakers, when we're on the floor with the lights, there's just such an artificial sound, maybe. You don't hear
absolutely
different nuances.
Absolutely. I mean, you have a combination of people that are playing artificial music and doing artificial things. Just feel like that. So, plays to that. That's not where we're coming from. Frankie was more of a New York style, kind of almost like more of a smoother kind of. He's coming from a different place. He had been in it for a while. You know what I mean? And his presentation was different. And all the tapes that I would hear from Frankie at the time, because I was too young to go to the warehouse and say, even the power plant, it was more about a finesse than Frankie had. Ron, on the other hand, was radical. Ron was everything. He was the streets of Chicago. Best way I could play. His element was to, he was highly responsible for breaking house music. He broke acid tracks. He broke a lot of new and up and coming artists and tracks and made like Move Your Body and stuff like that. That was music box stuff. You know what I mean? Frankie was responsible for breaking Your Love, Waiting on My Angel, things of that nature. And Ron was, the radical artist. Best way I can put it. And so I meeting Ron as a young guy. First, believe it or not, when he stopped playing the music box so much, he was working at a record store called Blue Records. And I never forget, I walked in there one day, I was like, what the hell is he doing? Didn't say too much because and Ron was not, let's be clear, he wasn't a really approachable dude. Okay, let's be clear. He was very, and I just bought my record phone and went on about my business. That was shit. Later, as I have to say this, like a year before he passed, is when I actually sat down and talked to Ron and had my hero say, that record off the States, I'm playing it at the club. That's one of my favorite records. I was like, I didn't fanboy too much, but but for me, that was my, that was my accolade at that time. You know what I mean? Frankie Knuckles and Dave Morales broke my record off the States because they had definite that they had just started the time. They were playing abroad, and that's what blew Alta States up. And then you have, Ron Hardy, who's, not playing in the boxing facility anymore, but he's still playing, and he's appreciating what I created. And they were the inspiration. You know what I mean? So, but Ron was a radical artist, and he died. He transitioned at a very young age. Now as I said, he was a 50-something-year-old man. He was only 33, 34 years old. You know what I mean? And I went to the funeral, and it was only 18 of us there. Yeah.
I would imagine a lot more people would have tried to.
It would have happened if it was in Chicago, but it was in Springfield, Illinois, which is where he passed, and where his mom was. So he's very responsible. So there was only 3 DJs that were of note at the time that were popular, that were there. Myself, Terry Hunter, and Armando Gallup, who's now passed on as well. And another friend of ours, John, who was with us. We were there, and then the rest was like music block staff. So we have a lot of people. Ron was so famous, you had people saying that it was happening.
So meanwhile, Larry remains in New York, and he's blowing up that scene. How do you feel that scene was compared to what Ron Hardy was doing in Chicago?
Well, obviously, I didn't get a chance to go to the Paradise Garage, but when I lived in New York, it's interesting because how things just line up. Being that Mr. Williams is from New York, Frankie Knuckles was from New York. I'm sort of an East Coast boy myself, and I'm coming from similar places. But anyway, a lot of people that were close to Larry, close to Mr. Williams, and close to Frankie, later became my friends, part of my inner circle. And I'm somebody, once again, source material, reference material. I've studied all this. So Larry, because we didn't get a chance to be in this life, was more a radical person too. He had a radical style, taking chances, that kind of thing. And that's what Ron was doing as well. He was more, and probably them and their drug of choice played a role in some of that. Made them a little bit more Jimi Hendrix-ish. You know what I mean? Like, let me just try. Let me try to play the guitar upside down. Let me burn the motherfucking guitar. Like this energy towards it. Just let me try different things. Where Brother Frankie was also radical too, but more of an artist. Because what people don't know is that Frankie was actually a designer. And he went to fashion school for design. And he was a draftsman, right? He's actually drafted the flyers for the power plant, that kind of thing. So Mr. Williams actually had some of his pieces, but he was an artist. He was a fine artist, that kind of thing. And that's what you got from Frankie when he was playing, right? He was designing. Larry, on the other hand, and Ron were more like, this is what I'm feeling now. This is what you're going to get. And this is what it is. We have even like a David Macusa was more, I want to tell a story. I want to create theater. So this is what you're going to get. It's, once again, when you get into the nuances of who these guys were and what they were doing, it's another whole level of thinking. It's not just somebody playing records. This is like somebody taking sound and using it and creating landscape picture, and creating a picture of your mind, which is what they're trying to do. So really, it's more that Ron and Larry were radical in how they approach things because they were tripping. You know what I'm saying? That's it. They were going out there. They wanted you to come too, and they knew what they were doing. That they really lived like they were like laboratory. That kind of thing. And Frankie was a little bit more, let me design something for you.
A little bit more finessed.
Exactly. That's the best way to put it. Yeah. And Larry was Frankie was coming from more of a David Crusoe type vibe. And Nikki, because Frankie used to work at the gallery. Nikki Sounds Club.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Just blow up the games. Matter of fact, you know what I mean? when you get a Nicky Siano play, you get that flavor. There's another guy that's also around. He doesn't, play as much. And we're working on that. Is Victor Rosado. Victor used to actually be David Crusoe's one of his students, and he also played in the last ending part of the Garage as well. But like when you hear Victor play, you get it. It's another whole thing. It's not what you think. It's really like this is different. You feel it in the artistry come across. And I think that's what kind of is missing. Making it more interesting than anything else. So I think that what happens is, once you kind of develop a sense of what this is all about, it's like having you develop a strong palate, right? It's not so much about being a snob; it's that you just develop your palate gets a little bit more. You can tell where things come from. It's like smoking a cigar, or there's people drink wine for that same thing. Food, it's the same thing. You kind of really develop a sophisticated understanding of what's going on. Versus, I want to go to the party, get drunk. I want to go to the party, pass out, fall down some stairs, wake up next day, forget myself. This kind of it's more you're going to go on this transcendental journey, right? For everybody, it's a tribal thing. Anyway, that's another whole conversation. But those are kind of some of the nuances and differences.
Do you feel that any club or place or DJ is creating that now?
Consistently?
Yeah.
Absolutely not. There's no place now. There's no place. Unfortunately. It's got to change. But, and I'm really trying to think. Travel and stuff. There's a law party that happens a couple times out of the year in New York. There was a golf party called Joy, which is some people from David's crew that were kind of like, I know my girl Colleen Cosmo tries to keep on the tradition of David and what we're doing. To me, those are things that are more grassroots. Everything else is just a party. Body and Soul do their thing. They do a party every once in a while as a tribute to what they were doing regularly back in New York. But these are things that happen sporadically. Consistently, no, absolutely not. There's nothing.
That's true. Yeah. What about like Shelter, for example? That's a huge party in New York.
But this happens sporadically. It's not like every week I was a Shelter head. You know what I mean? I was there at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning with my baby papa and the whole night, being ready to dance and that kind of that's ritual. It's not happening at the moment. But the science is still there. We need more places like this. It'd be a lot more happier people, I'll tell you that, in the world if they did this.
I agree. So the history you went into earlier, from my understanding, you put together a show that was at Art Fest.
Yeah, so I did a thing called Walk the Night, which is based upon a song by that's the name of that group. Just right now, I got the name of the group. Still come back to it. But it was a big song that Frankie would play. It's really a song on cruising, to be honest with you. But it's reminiscent of an era and a time. And it's kind of like use that juxtaposition against photography from 3 different photographers, one of them being Mr. Robert Williams. He actually opened the warehouse for it to be a gallery because he was a photographer. Right. So he's got all these photos from that time. And then we had Bill Bernstein, who's a celebrated photographer, who shot Studio 54, Paradise Garage, and all these other different things. All the way up to doing professionally, he shot Paul McCartney and stuff like that. He's accomplished that. We did him. We also did what is my girl's name? Tina Ball. Was also somebody that we did photography from. And Tina had pictures from inside the garage, actually Sound Factory and that kind of thing. So it was a photo exhibit from from 77 all the way up into the early 90s. And so it was a way of creating a symposium for people to engage with and see what was going on at that time. Walk the night, like a gallery, a little night gallery, if you will. And so we had a combination of events, combination of talks, that kind of thing. We also did a thing where we talked about clip speakers, which were the original speakers that David Producer Ron Trent. The crew that is out of New York, they put together a book that was actually kind of like, okay, so I'm trying to give you the condensed version of it. Yeah, so Paul and Barbie from Love Injection magazine, they put together the book, and it's basically a book of all the audiophile papers that were collected over a period of time. And so we did a whole symposium. We talked about clip speakers. We went to an audiophile room that's actually in Miami called Soundworks, and we did a whole talk about it, the importance of sound, and the history of the speakers and that kind of thing. We did that all the way up to having a panel of DJs from Arthur Baker to Lil Vega, Victor Rosado, and the photographers. So we did the whole thing, and then the final day we had exhibit pictures and party, close it out. So it was just a way of having a more immersive way of people engaging with culture. I've gone to Art Basel play, but I've also gone to Art Basel as someone just admiring the art. I've gone to actual Basel. What I noticed is it's very, it's not immersive. It's not engaging. And I believe art should be engaged with. You should give it So this was a way of creating a situation where, it's educational, it was engaging, people could get involved, and then, appreciate some art, some photography and that kind of thing, and really learn something. So it's called Walk. Yeah.
Is it a one-time thing or?
Well, the idea was that it would be a tribal museum. We're still working on that. We kind of ran into a few snags. But we're in the process of, maybe even doing it again this year on a small scale. We'll see. We'll talk about it. Because it was a lot to put on. And I wanted to do it out of my pocket.
Wow.
It's a balance. Let me tell you.
So it seems like you've got a lot going on with your plate currently. You're starting a new label with Joe. You're still traveling a lot. You have a show that you just put together. Where do you see yourself? What's going on in the next few months?
I will continue to create. I'm a creator. That's what I do. So there'll be more working on the second Warm album, which is a big follow-up from the first album I did. With the Stars, Say to You. But I'm working on my second album. And so the plan is to do more touring with my band that premiere at the We Out Here Festival in Lake Natal in the EU. And more DJ gigs, gigs where I can really express myself. It's not about just playing a whole bunch of festivals and that kind of thing, which is playing festivals is great, but I like to get my point across. You have this 2-hour span, 3-hour span to express yourself sometimes can be a little tiring, but I think it's important that, I'm able to tell my story and do what I need to do as an artist. So we put, more of that and more creative projects, which I can't talk about everything. There's a lot to come. A lot of work to do.
What other artists are you hoping to collaborate with?
That's a big list, man. Hopefully I can get a hold of I'm just gonna say my man Herb Allen. He's a long time fan. And I have a track for him that I want to have him play on the album. And some other artists, kind of working on that kind of thing. But the second album is almost done. Haven't heard it would be. I try to work with older artists that I grew up appreciating because the concept of Warm is more like taking a look back and moving forward kind of thing. So it's like 70s, 80s, jazz, crowd rock, AOR, adult-oriented rock, and this kind of thing. And, it's kind of a live piece in the truck now. And that's what I translate when I do the band live on stage. So it's very, there's a certain sense of kind of keeping that authenticity versus it just being a straight electronic band and I'm standing or doing an electronic performance, I'm standing up with a computer the whole time looking, So, it's actually, something that I'm striving for. We did pretty well for this first run. There's some things we tightened up, but it came out pretty well. So maybe it was just more output. Let's put it like that.
So going through your discography, what track would you say is like your best achievement that you're most proud of?
That's a hard one. I don't know that I have one. I have things that I like, and I think, okay, that's cool. But I don't have one just yet. Joe and I developed our own imprint together, which is called Sacred Medicine, which is a combination of his labels, because he does the whole sacred rhythm, and I did prescription. So that's what the Sacred Medicine is about. And it's we have a lot of surprises coming. Just put it like that. But I don't like to tell the whole person. Sometimes things need to be left for the imagination. You know what I mean? That's the beauty of what we have is our imagination, right? So keep it a little mysterious.
It's been a pleasure having you. We're so excited to have you on LA tonight to listen to you play. And it was such an amazing story to hear what you have to say about the history of house and what you're doing now.
Thank you.
You're an incredible influence to what music is currently.
Thank you. Well, we'll continue to keep it going and spearheading new things, new horizons. House music has its own history and story for sure, but it's really a story that's connected to all other forms of music. Radio music appreciators, collectors of music, and we'll continue to push the boundaries. That's what we're here for. So it's good to be here with Amazing.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Hopefully you enjoyed the show, and then you'll see more of us coming up.